the earliest times, Boca Grande and also to the south, Usepa Island, to my knowledge, was the birthplace of modern big game fishing.
Boca Grande Pass, where the water is deep and the tide runs strong.
The leader on your fly line tests out at only 12 pounds. He's nothing if not gallant, the fighting tarpon.
Proudly we salute you, Silver King of the Gulf.
When I first moved to Boca Grande, it was a place that I was never going to leave. I just remember the number of fish that used to push down the Gulf. I remember one time seeing a string of fish that I swear must have been 5 miles long. The pass would be so solid with fish that it would just be you'd drive across, stop your boat, and it was just nothing but bubbles coming up, like a jacuzzi of all the rolling going on in the pass. The Mayaca River and all that stuff would be dumping out, and there'd be like big hyson jams floating out, and there'd be crabs hanging on the edge of those hysons, and the dang tarpon would just get up there and just slurp them off of it. But the number of fish up there were just unbelievable. That's how special that fishery was there. That was I moved there in 90, full time. And that was from 90 all the way till about 2004 when I started seeing the pressure and the way people fish start changing our fishery.
What are some of the issues that Boca Grande is facing?
That's a tough one. We can break down the threats to the tarpon population into 2 categories. The first is loss of nursery habitat for juveniles, and the biggest threat there is coastal development. The second is the threats to adults, and that comes from things like red tide, a loss of prey, like menhaden or mullet, and fishing pressure or boating pressure. Typically, people will think that an ecosystem or a fishery slowly declines, slowly declines over time. But what typically happens is that a system will slowly decline, but it can handle it, so you don't see much change. And then all of a sudden it gets to a threshold or a tipping point, and the bottom kind of drops out.
The water crisis in 2016, we had severe red tide on the West Coast. We also that was the year when we had severe blue-green algae on the East Coast. Then a few years later, 2018, we had again massive discharges to the coast, and what science saw there was you had this freshwater toxic algae bloom, blue-green algae, cyanobacteria, and then you had the saltwater harmful algae bloom, Karenia brevis, the red tide, and you had both of them creating this ultimate cocktail of disaster.
So we did a study recently. We were tracking tarpon with tags, looking at fish kill reports, and also interviewing longtime fishing guides. And essentially what we found is that going way back, red tide events did not overlap with tarpon season. The fact that red tides and tarpon season overlap is a new phenomenon, right? Think about that, that's important. If you fished 25 years ago, 20 years ago, red tide and tarpon season didn't overlap. And now it's pretty common. So that's going to change the behavior of tarpon. What we found is that when red tide started to overlap with tarpon season, the tarpon would move around, so they wouldn't be in red tide, they'd be in non-red tide spots, empty spots in between red tide blooms. That gets difficult when red tide is everywhere, and that's when we have things like there's occasional reports of large amounts of tarpon being dead from red tide, or tarpon leaving, say, Boca Grande and not coming back. If they go offshore to spawn and the red tide comes, they might not come back, so that's affected the fishery.
The population increase here, all these people coming down to Florida to live the dream of Florida, is coming like a rain that never ends, okay? These tracts of land, 1,000 acres here, 500 acres there, are being knocked down like crazy because development is going probably crazier at this point in time than it ever has in this region of the state.
Usually when people think about a fishery, a tarpon fishery, or any other that occurs in the ocean or in estuaries, they don't think about what's happening on land. But all that water on land eventually gets into the estuary. So the more conservation land we have in the watersheds, the better. And the more, if we do develop, we do it in places that won't impact the estuary, the better.
Every time you put as many units on per acre as you can in 1,000 acres with very little stormwater treatment to handle all the dirty water that massive development is now going to create, you are now knocking away the base of the ecosystem, which directly is tied to the health of our entire fishery, especially our tarpon fishery.
So juvenile tarpon require mangrove wetlands. If you're back in the backcountry and at the bottom is mucky and there's a lot of mosquitoes, it's hard to get into. That's juvenile tarpon habitat. We've lost a lot of those habitats already in Florida. Florida's lost around 50% of its mangrove cover already. We continue to lose some of those. So that is going to limit how many juvenile tarpon can grow up and become adults, because we've already lost some of that, what we call nursery habitat. So the more conservation land we have in the watersheds, the better. And the more, if we do develop, we do it in places that won't impact the estuary, the better.
Where we are right now, I believe, is at a tipping point. Do we continue to allow out of control development with no regard for the repercussions that are going to come and the ripple effects out into our local ecosystem? Or can we make a better decision? Can we have the conversation of when is enough enough? Can we get with our local county commissioners and discuss the fact that unbridled development is not a good thing for the future of our coastal economies, because more people is not necessarily a good thing. So the current population of tarpon, in my opinion, is like, we have enough tarpon to fix what we've done and the amount of tarpon that have been taken out of it. However, it is not in a good place if we continue to lose them at the rate we're losing them now. But from what I've seen in the last 2 decades that I've used side scan technology, there are approximately half the tarpon in Boca Grande Pass that I saw when I started using that technology 20 years ago. And that concerns me deeply. There's still plenty, seems to be plenty, everybody has fun, but I do not see the population as being near as robust as it was in the preceding decades.
So one of the ways I look at this is people get depressed. A lot of times I'll give a presentation to a fishing club. And now I start out by saying, look, I want to make you really depressed, take you down a deep rabbit hole, but then I want to bring you back up because we have a lot of hope.
There's still a tremendous amount of fish that are coming to Boca Grande. But just absolutely going to be numbers of them.
And you can still go out there and have some spectacular days doing this. I mean, just as good as it gets.
Oh, I got him.
Once people really started to get involved, and we saw this massive swing of attention on this issue and public pressure and engagement, we saw progress start to happen. You know, we had that last event in 2018 where it was every year or two we were getting these discharge events. We now went from 2018 all the way until 2024 without a collapse to our fishery. As a result of people getting involved, we're starting to see that swing of the pendulum the other way into periods of recovery.
And so we know that if we address the problems that everybody realizes are the problems, we'll stop the decline of the fishery and it will improve again and go back to the days of glory. We know that can happen.
This is the real deal, and we need to come together as a community that want to do something about saving one of the most incredible gifts that's ever been given to Southwest Florida, and that's the amazingly historically valuable tarpon fishery.
One, two, three.
Mother Nature is incredibly resilient, and if you give her just a smidge of a chance, we can easily save whatever we choose to out here in the wild world. We just have to stop doing what we've always done the way we've always done it.
And so I think the call to action here to the people who are fishing is nobody else is going to protect this fishery. If you don't get off your ass and make a lot of noise and make this a top priority, no one else is going to do it. So when you wake up in the morning before you go fishing for tarpon, you look at yourself in the mirror and you promise that after you go fishing for tarpon, you're going to get involved in making sure the tarpon fishery is good for the future. A great way to do that is to join Bonefish Tarpon Trust or another organization that works to protect the environment. And they can provide you guidance, but you can also contact your local politicians at the county level, the state level, to make sure they know that this is a top priority to fix these issues.
Go ahead. Ow! Wait. Good.
The most common question we get is, what can I do? And the most valuable thing that individuals can do is to make sure that they use their voice to drive progress on these issues. And wherever you choose to plug in, whether it's with Captains for Clean Water or another organization that's out there, the important thing is that you're plugged in. Join this effort. Join the movement to fix our waters, to save the Everglades, to preserve tarpon fishing. And however you see the best path or the most comfortable area to do it, the important thing is that you use your voice.